Greetings, everybody, and welcome to Devotions today. It's the 2nd of May. Well, yesterday was Workers' Day in South Africa. Today, believe it or not, is the International Tuna Day, to show how important tuna fish are. But why do we have Workers' Day or Labor Day? And the reason is because way back in the 19th century, there were workers who were really campaigning for an 8-hour working day. And it was a huge movement among workers. And the day, the 1st of May, was chosen because of a big riot that there was in Chicago. It was called the Haymarket Riot. It happened in 1886 at the beginning of May and started off peacefully and ended up with the police stepping in. Somebody was killed, a few were injured, and then somebody threw a bomb into the crowd. And as a result, the socialist groups, the labor groups, decided that they would make the 1st of May an international day to remember the plight of workers. If we think of our own country, our economy rides on the back of workers of all sorts. If you think of those who work in our mines right from the very beginning, when the diamonds were discovered, millions went to Kimberley just to make a living. The coal workers, the gold mine workers. If we think of our domestic workers, I mean, they are such an essential part of our economy, because without them, those who have domestic workers like us wouldn't be able to go to work. They look after our children, they look after our homes, and they are essential. If you think of farm workers who collect all the crops, who pack the crops and who load them up and all the rest of it, without them, where would that part of our economy be? If we think even of taxi drivers, even though we have our thoughts about taxi drivers, they are workers nevertheless. And without them, people wouldn't get to their place of work. Our economy would almost grind to a halt. So there are all these things. And South Africa has got the biggest disparity between the haves and the have-nots. Despite our immense prosperity with all the minerals in our country, with the incredible wealth that there is under our ground, for example, as well as in our farming, etc., we see that a lot of the areas where the wealth is, like the West Coast with all its diamonds, there's very little prosperity there. We haven't shared well within our land, and I feel my own sense of responsibility about that. I'd like to read you a portion from the book of Acts. Shortly after the day of Pentecost, the Christians came together and formed a community. Acts chapter 4, verse 32 and onwards. All the believers were one in heart and mind. No one claimed that any of his possessions was his own, but they shared everything they had. With great power, the apostles continued to testify to the resurrection of the Lord Jesus, and much grace was upon them all. There was no needy person among them. From time to time, those who owned land or houses sold them, and they brought the money from the sales and put it at the apostles' feet. It was distributed to anyone as he had need. Joseph, a Levite from Cyprus, also called Barnabas, sold a field, and he owned and brought the money and put it at the apostles' feet. That was an early communist society. I think George Bernard Shaw said, if you were a Christian, you had to be a communist. Well, we know what went wrong with communism. Selfishness and greed wrecked that. So we need to be very careful. But there is this communistic element within our Christian faith. And if we look at this passage, it says that, number one, nobody saw his or her possessions as their own. They were prepared to share. They testified to the power of Jesus in his resurrection. So there was spiritual power. And there was not a needy person among them. What a system. What a glorious economy. But even that didn't last forever. You read the next chapter and you see Annas and Sapphira, who tried to duck the system. And many experiments have been made within the Christian church, and most of them have not lasted the distance. We struggle with this. But I would challenge you today to think about Workers' Day, about the place of workers, about our need to treat what workers we have with fairness and justice, and to be able to learn to share what we have in the way that we can. May God bless you on this day. Bye for now.